Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. And speaking of books, I have two of my own books coming out this spring and summer. Princess Charming is a picture book, which debuts on April 19th, and Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature, comes out on July 1st, and it is truly a labor of love. I hope you'll pre-order, order, and join me on tour as I go across the country. You can find out more at zibbyowens.com or bookendsmemoir.com. And you can follow me on Instagram at zibbyowens because I always post about everything. Enjoy the show. Jean Chen Ho is the author of Fiona and Jane. She is a doctoral candidate in creative writing and literature at the University of Southern California, where she is a Dorn's Life Fellow in fiction. Jean has an MFA from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and her writing has been published in the Georgia Review, GQ, Harper's Bazaar, Guernica, The Rumpus, Apogee, McSweeney's, Internet Tendency, and others. She was born in Taiwan, grew up in Southern California, and lives in Los Angeles. Welcome, Jean. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Fiona and Jane.
Hi, Zibby. It's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for giving me the world news update. I will be checking in with you for my, updates from now on. Oh my gosh, imagine. Oh, the world is so crazy. Okay, anyway, Fiona and Jane. Let's talk about this. Fiona, we go into this setting. We have a secret come out right away. There's something with her dad. It has ripples on the rest of the story. Things aren't what they seem necessarily. And as a young woman, she has to figure out sort of how to deal with everything. And then, of course, we have her friend and her story and how everything intersects. How did you come up with this? Why these characters? Why you? Give me the whole story. Just tell me the whole story.
Yeah. I mean, before I started working on this book, or I knew that I was working on a book, I was just writing short stories, trying stuff out. And I had always been interested in writing stories about friendship between women and girls. And, I think before I started working on this project, I was sort of playing around with just thinking about how Asian American women relate to one another. And because I am, from Southern California, I also found that most of my stories were set in LA. And so eventually, as I was trying to write these kinds of stories, or maybe like the stories of Fiona and Jane, I was moving toward the structure of having a book that was told in two voices. So Fiona and Jane is told in, alternating voices. There are first-person stories told from Jane's point of view, and then there are third-person stories told from Fiona's point of view. And, as I was working on the project, I also found that I wanted to play with different eras of their friendship. And so there's, the first story that you mentioned, that's when Jane is a senior in high school. She's just turned 18. And, the book moves into the past and into the future. But by the last story, these women are almost turning 40. So it really encompasses about, more than 20 years of their friendship. And I was really interested in just exploring what a long friendship could look like.
Do you have a friend like this that you kind of based it on?
It's not just one friend. I have a group of friends who I'm still really close to from high school. So Fiona and Jane had been friends since the second grade. So my group of friends, we don't go back that far, but we probably met in junior high. So we grew up together. And I definitely drew, if not from the particular circumstances of our friendship, from those, I definitely did draw inspiration, however, from just sort of the emotional ups and downs that we went through.
Wow. There is nothing like old friends. That is for sure. When did you realize you loved writing short stories? How did that happen? And was that always the genre that you were naturally attracted to from the beginning?
I think that I had always loved reading short stories. So, one of my favorite story collections of all time is Dubliners by James Joyce. And, that collection is sort of loosely linked just around the city of Dublin. So you find all these characters that are in the city. So, and then another one is Lost in the City by Edward P. Jones. So I think that I had always been too intimidated to say, I'm writing a novel, I am working on a novel now. And so I'm no longer as afraid to say that. But I think when I was starting out, when I was in my MFA, I just wanted to try short pieces and just tried to figure out how to make a thing that was, 25 pages, 30 pages, as compelling as I possibly could. And, as I was working on Fiona and Jane, the first story that I finished in the book was The Movers. And that story comes later in the book chronologically. The women are in their 30s. But after I finished that story, I found that I wasn't done with these characters yet. I wanted to know more about them. I wanted to know, at that point, I didn't know about their childhood. I hadn't discovered, this family secret that Jane discovers about her dad. So I was just really compelled to write into these characters and find out more about them. And that's where the project began.
Interesting. What about the piano teacher?
Yeah. What about her?
So the piano teacher starts this sort of introspective look into sexuality and relationships. And, what do we think about this coming from the piano teacher herself? Well, would you now I'm like, what happens with piano lessons these days? I don't know. My kids play guitar now. I don't know. Anyway, tell me about that character and how that piece of the puzzle unraveled in that way.
Yeah. So this is in the first story for your listeners who haven't read the book yet. So Jane starts having a little crush on her piano teacher. So Jane is 18. This piano teacher is a grad student. So she's in her 20s. So she's a little older, but, they have a little flirtation. And I think that there were multiple things going into the creation of this character. First of all, if you're an Asian American kid growing up at the time that I did in the 80s and 90s, one of the things that you probably did was you had to take piano lessons. I don't know why this is a thing, but immigrant Asian
I
parents...
also had to take piano lessons. But
okay. Do you have immigrant Asian parents?
I don't. But I felt like everybody at my school had to take piano. I feel like it was required or something. In fact, I actually took it at the school. So maybe it was part of my curriculum. Although I feel like it was just me on this random platform above the gym and the piano teacher while everybody else was in gym. Now that I think about it, I think I'm going to have to call my mom and find out why was I up there on 9M floor or whatever. Anyway.
Was it a replacement for PE? Because I would have actually loved that. I hated PE growing up.
I didn't like PE because we had to change into, we used to have to wear these I can't even discuss these bloomers under our uniform. This is when I was in lower school. Anyway, it was a whole thing. And then change into shorts.
Okay. So you also had to take piano lessons.
Yes.
So maybe it was just, I don't know. But you said that your kids, you're not making them go through this torture.
Well, my older kids I did. And honestly, I don't think I could handle hearing the practice from any more kids if it was the same quality level as my older kids. They would not be ashamed to admit it. We went to this big piano. I'm sorry, this is totally off topic of your book, but they didn't practice enough, and we had to go to this big recital with a bunch of our family friends, and everybody's kids got up and were playing these things. My son, his two fingers was played the Batman theme song.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was. I was just sitting there oh my God, let the floor open up. Obviously, I didn't have my kids practice enough, so it's my fault.
That's hilarious. Oh my God. I feel like I've had recurring nightmares, or I used to have recurring nightmares of going to the piano. I had to take piano lessons. So that I would have nightmares of going to the piano recital and all of a sudden realizing that I had not practiced enough and I had forgotten everything and just making a complete fool of myself on the recital stage. So anyway, all of which to say, I wanted to play with this idea of a kid who was taking piano lessons, which to me felt like a very quintessential Asian American immigrant kid experience. But maybe I was wrong. And maybe it's just everybody had to go through that torturous experience. And then I wanted to sort of subvert that idea of this piano virtuoso, and have Jane start to have this romantic attraction to her piano teacher. And, I remember I didn't think of it this way when I was a kid, but there is something romantic about learning how to play the piano because, the teacher is sitting right next to you. they're showing you how to place your fingers. I don't know. It's just, maybe as an adult, I'm like mapping that onto the experience. But yeah, so she has a little crush on this young woman. And at the same time, she, in that story, she goes to visit her dad and he actually comes out of the closet. And it's like this, I don't know if that, it's okay that that's like the reveal that happens in the story. But I wanted to sort of set up those two, like Jane's relationship to her dad and then her relationship to her piano teacher as, a point of tension.
Yeah. I love that. It also raises this whole, like, is sexuality learned, inherited in your DNA from, it just raises all that good stuff, all that conversation,
Yeah.
So did you grow up in LA and are you there? Do you live there now?
I am. Yeah, I am here now. So I didn't grow up in LA proper. I grew up in the suburbs. Mm-hmm. So my parents still live there and I, go and have dinner with them like almost every week. That was interrupted sadly in the last couple of years by the pandemic. But now, we're vaccinated and we're back to having our weekly Sunday dinners. So,
nice.
Yeah.
I was just there until 2 days ago. So, we could have done this out there in person.
Are you in New York or DC?
I'm in New York now, but I'm out there a lot. My husband's work is mostly there. So anyway, So tell me about your process when you're writing. Like, is it where I'm seeing you now? Is that where you like to write? Do you like to go outside or do you like, what times do you like to write? What's your whole thing?
Yeah. I'm sitting at my desk. You can see that I have this giant plant behind me. My process is that when I'm in a good groove, I'll wake up early in the morning. I'm a morning writer. And then I'll start in my notebook just to sort of like create a bridge between my dream brain and then my like alive brain. So I don't like to go straight to the computer when I start working, just because I feel like I want to write longhand to sort of get those juicy dream state ideas going. And then I'll drink coffee and then I'll go to my computer and I'll write for an hour. Like I only make myself write for an hour. And then, most times I'll go over an hour, but once I do an hour, I feel like I've done my duty for the day. It's very low stakes. It's very low stakes. So, I know that some writers, they have like a word count goal if they're working on a project. I can't do that just because for whatever reason it doesn't work for me. So instead of having a word count, I go by time and like number of days. So I try to write, like I said, like write for 1 hour a day. And then because it's so low stakes, I often will go longer than that. And then the other really important thing is that I don't look at my emails or check my phone messages before 11 o'clock or noon if I'm being really good. So,
wow.
Because once I start looking at Instagram or checking my messages, it's all over. Like I'll just be on my phone for 2 hours and I don't even know where the time went. So that's definitely a restriction I have to put on myself in the morning.
Wow. Once I went till like 9 and I thought that was a huge victory. And I also like missed something I needed before then. So I was like, I can't do this. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. This is only when I'm in a good writing groove,
Yes.
So
okay, I got it.
Yeah. So it's not like like I've been doing book publicity for Fiona and Jane for the last, month and a half. So I have not been writing. I have been waking up and checking for emails and messages from my team like every day. So first thing when I wake up. So I'm not being that virtuous right now.
Have you done any in-person things or all virtual?
Mostly virtual. I've done a couple of in-person things. One was outdoors. And so that was really nice to, just hang out with people. And, we had to be vaccinated. And then one was indoors at a bookstore at my local indie here in LA. And everybody was masked. And I don't know, I was a little bit nervous about the indoor event, to be honest, but I was also excited. And, now I'm really glad that happened because, doing virtual events is really wonderful because it's much more accessible for people in other places. but there's nothing like an in-person event, there's just that energy in the room. So that was really pleasant.
That's awesome. Tell me more about your novel.
Well, I'm working on the second book. It's a novel. It'll be really different from Fiona and Jane. It's part of it will be set in the 19th century. So it is a very much more researched book than Fiona and Jane is. And it's about, part of the book is about the formation of Los Angeles Chinatown. And so I've been doing a lot of archival research on how the Chinatown here was founded. And so the Chinatown that stands today is not the original Chinatown, because the original neighborhood that the Chinese immigrants lived in the mid 1900s was destroyed. And then the community moved about a couple of miles north and established this new area. And so even though there are lots of historical records to look at, there's not a lot of voices from Chinese Americans themselves, especially before the turn of the century. And so, there's, as you can expect in the annals of history, there are almost no women and there's no people of color in the official records. It's all wealthy land owning white men who are either writing memoirs, or I'm looking at their business ledgers that have names of their contracted Chinese laborers. But it's really interesting to sort of piece together that stuff and also read for what's in the silences. So part of my project is inventing or listening to those voices that haven't been recorded and seeing what comes out of there.
That must be fascinating. That sounds
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about this new project.
So when you're not writing for an hour a day, what do you do with the rest of the day?
Well, today I'm going to get a haircut.
Nice. It's so funny. My husband, when we got together and I would, we'd be doing our own thing all day or whatever. And I'd always be like, okay, well, what were you up to? What'd you do today or whatever? And he's like, I hate when people ask me that. On a day when he wasn't working or something. He's like, I don't know. What do I do? I don't know. Why does everybody always want to know? And I'm like, I'm just being polite. I'm not, what are you hiding? What are you doing?
Where are you going?
Yeah, exactly.
For the rest of the day.
I'm like, what are you paying bills? It's okay. You can tell me.
I mean, I think mostly I'm reading. I'm working on a book review right now. Oh, and I am also a PhD student. So I'm finishing up my doctorate in literature and creative writing at USC. So I'm set to graduate.
Oh,
yes. I mean,
I forgot. I'm getting one of the hardest degrees to get in the entire world. Sorry.
I mean, I've been out of coursework for a few years. So it's just been very self-directed with, my advisors, giving me feedback and stuff. But because I'm not going to campus anymore, it just sort of feels like, oh, this is another project that's ongoing, and it's been ongoing for years. But I'm set to graduate in a couple of months. So I'll be out of here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I also watch a lot of reality TV. So, I mean, I'm just coming up. Nice. There's a whole range of things that I'm doing.
Excellent. Somebody on Instagram put a comment on something and said they wanted to do a show called, instead of diners, drive-ins, and dives, what did she call it? Books, beverages, and something else with a B. I don't know.
Babes.
Babes, maybe?
Babes.
Anyway.
Yeah, I would totally love to be a part of that. Books, drinks,
right?
Channing Tatum,
Yeah, totally. Okay, advice for aspiring authors. What's your advice?
Gosh, I would say find a community of other writers. I think that, when you're working on a project, when you're just trying to figure out what your book is about, feels really lonely. And at least for me, it felt like there are times when I was just writing into a void and I didn't know where I was going, if anybody was ever going to read this, if I would ever sell it. And it's just, you have to be really self-motivated and you have to have a lot of faith. My book took 5 years to write. So, there were I didn't work on it. Like I said, I only do an hour a day. So maybe that's why it took so long, but I'm just kidding. But I don't know, it's just like there's definitely fallow periods, where I'm just like, I don't know what Jane wants, or I don't know who Fiona is in this moment. And so having a community of writers, not just like teachers and mentors, even though, having mentors is really wonderful too, but having writers who are also just working their way through it and working on their own manuscripts. And you can trade work and be accountable to one another without necessarily, being like on the hook to give feedback. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And if you want to, you can. But throughout working on this book, I had a writing group, and the three of us would just meet up once a month. And that was a really nice way of feeling like, okay, I have to, by this meeting date, have something to show my writing group.
Got it. Amazing. Okay, Jean, thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
What are you going to be doing the rest of the day?
I have 2 more podcasts, picking up my kids at school.
That's a lot of stuff. Yeah. That's enough.
And it's later here.
That's right. Okay. And we have to, I guess, stay updated on what's happening in Ukraine. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you like this podcast, you will love my new anthology called Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids. Check it out, and you'll hear from 49 authors about all sorts of things moms don't have time to do. All the authors have been on this podcast. Also, check out my TikTok @with Zibby and Tracy, my other podcast, Sex Talk with Zibby and Tracy. Check out Moms Don't Have Time to Write on Medium. And of course, my new publishing company called Zibby Books. And now back to our daily author interview site and a quick hello from some of my kids. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Enjoy the show.